Well, I'm on the advisory board there, but I am a co founder of the Labawi Academy, and I'm the executive director of it, even though it's an ADIS. And um, OHBD gave us a very generous grant to run a coding camp for girls this summer. Yeah.
I'm the creative director of the book project. So I'm a children's book writer, and I have written books for publishers here in the United States. I really wanted to create some books for children in Ethiopia, since that's where I learned how to read. And I am mostly the writer for a lot of the books, but I've also been trying to draw in some other writers. And then I try to find a lot of illustrators so that they can do the art to make my words come alive. Or sometimes people actually do the art first, and then I look at their art. That's how it happened with the Gondar books that I was telling you. I actually saw the art that the children had created, and then my sister and I wrote the text to go along with it. And then I'm the one that looks at how the art and the books can go together, how the words and the art go together. And I kind of supervise the first digital team that figures out how to make the books digitally ready. So I'm the head of the creative part, and then we turn it over to a production team in Seattle.
OHBD is an organization that I've been with which I've been involved for over 7 years. So usually I try to donate myself and help the organization raise funds. And whenever I travel to Ethiopia, I take books with me and distribute them in Ethiopia, visit the libraries that the organization has built, and so on and so forth.
I am one of the creative team for the Ready, Set, Go books. And my sister and I, mostly at this point, we write the stories more than anything else. Last year, we had a lot of work trying to figure out our systems. This year we got the systems down pretty well, and especially with Eleanor's work on systems with her team, the production went a lot faster. So that freed us up to do the creative work, which is wonderful.
I am in the advisory committee. Before it all started, Jenny Kurtz and myself, we were talking about books and how beautiful it is, and she's a writer. She had a project before that in Ethiopia, and we both had the same vision, and then we talked for hours. And the next year they were doing this fundraising. I was so excited, and I volunteered.
I'm a board member. Well, I know Eleanor, and I'm an Ethiopian, so they're doing a lot of things in Ethiopia, so I got excited about it, and we talked, and I said, okay, I'll help.
So I'm the board chair of Ethiopia Reads, which is a non-profit that's been working in Ethiopia for 15 years, building libraries, training librarians and educators, and providing books to children around Ethiopia, in every part of the country.
Well, Eleanor, who we all know, Angelides, she, a member of our board on our school worked with Eleanor at Amazon. And, he got us connected because she was so interested. She was at that time helping to raise funds for Ethiopia Reads. And we knew about Ethiopia Reads also, and so we all kind of got connected. And our school then, in fact, at this very museum was her very first event. I was remembering that. And our whole board came, and so we're very interested in supporting that. And then when she founded OHBD as a separate organization, she asked me to be on the advisory board.
Well, I've known Eleanor for a long time because I was a volunteer with Ethiopia Reads for about 20 years. So Eleanor used to raise money for Ethiopia Reads, and then when she decided to create her own nonprofit, she talked to me about whether I had an idea of something that I would like to do that I hadn't had a chance to do yet. And I said, well, I've been raising money for Ethiopia Reads, but I've never gotten a chance to put on my creative hat and do something creative. And she said, I think that's a really good project for Open Hearts, Big Dreams.
I got involved 7 years ago when the organization was it wasn't in existence, right? There was actually another organization called Ethiopia Reads, if you remember. So Eleanor was very much involved in that organization. So we got together at an event where we were raising funds for Ethiopia Reads. Then she continued to work with that organization for a long time, and eventually, as you know, she started her own organization, nonprofit organization, OHPD.
Well, Jane is my sister, and she and I created this idea. It was her brainstorm, it was her idea, but she knew she didn't want to do it alone, and she came to me and she told me her idea, and I thought, wow, that sounds interesting. That would be fun to do together, and that's how we started.
Reading was just part of my life, and when I was a little girl, my teacher, when I was in Qes Timurt Bet, gave me a book, and I still remember the title. It's Dafara Sanafu. It means Dafara is a boy, and Dafara Sanafu means Dafara the lazy boy. And I read the whole book in like a couple of hours, and my teacher, my family couldn't believe it. I still remember the story. The gist of the story is Dafara was a boy who have very rich parents, and they have spoiled him, and they never taught him anything, they never showed him anything, and they died. And he didn't like school, and they didn't worry about it. And then they both died, and then he was like penniless, and he was struggling in life. So wherever he went, when he saw children who are like true ones who are not going to school, he would tell them, please go to school. I don't want you to be like me. So that really was something which has left so much in me, and I became an educator too.
My life, I'm a teacher. I'm an artist. So as a teacher, reading is very important, right? And also I'm also wrote a book, and I always think about reading and writing is very important, just like the art. So that got me really involved because I believe in reading, and kids who read always do a good job. And also it's good for you to read and know a lot of information, all that kind of stuff.
It wasn't my idea. I met an Ethiopian librarian at San Francisco Public Library who wanted to go home and open a library. And I kind of helped him, and it grew into Ethiopia Reads. Jane Kurtz and Johannes Gebri-Georgis started it. We opened our first library in 2003 in Baklabet in Addis Ababa, a public children's library.
Well, when I was younger, there is a writer in English named Mary Renault, and she wrote historical fiction about ancient Greek times, and she was a big influence for me. She only wrote 5 books, and I read them all, so she was a big influence. But I have always loved reading, of course, and as an educator, of course, we know it's the most important thing to get children and students involved in reading.
Well, I learned how to read in Ethiopia. My mom hadn't even finished college yet when she and my dad went to Ethiopia to work, but she was such an avid reader, and that's how I learned to read, and that's how my sisters and my brother and I learned to read, was from watching our mother, who loved books. So her love of books rubbed off on me, and my whole life really has been about books. My grandchildren are Ethiopian American. Their mom is Ethiopian, and so she wasn't that used to the idea of reading with little kids, but I watched her reading with my grandkids, and so I can see that Ethiopians of a younger generation are starting to get that idea of how important books can be.
I was born and raised in Ethiopia. So I left Ethiopia when I was about 18 years old. And went to the Sudan and became a refugee there. And then I had an opportunity to come to U.S. about 30 years ago. And I drove a taxi cab here in Seattle for 5 years. And I put myself through school at the University of Washington. And then got a job at Microsoft. So I've been working at Microsoft for 22 years. So I'm a director at Microsoft, by the way. So speaking of books, the first time actually I remember myself reading books was at the University of Washington, because back then, when I was going to school in Ethiopia, in Gondar, I don't even remember if we had a library, later on reading books. So I don't even remember me reading books. So once I was exposed to the power of books as an adult at the University of Washington, then I started to think about how can I afford that opportunity to young people in Ethiopia, and got involved. So books actually not only have helped me become employed and get a job and live a good life, but also they have changed my perspective, and they have widened my view about the world that we live in. So that's I mean, I can't even talk about it enough, how books have changed my life.
Oh my goodness, Janie and I were the two oldest in our family of 7 children, and we both became total bookworms at a very young age. We were both finishing our children's books at home in Ethiopia, where we learned to read at home. We finished our children's books and we started in on the adult book shelves of our home at very young age. At age 12, age 10, we were reading our parents' books, and in some cases we got books taken away from us because they were not appropriate for us to be reading. So we read everything we could, and when I first went off to boarding school, I was just amazed at the idea of a library. And the library was just one small room with a wall full of books, but one wall full of books. I read over 100 books that year.
It's like books are becoming like a garden in Ethiopia, where there was bare and there was nothing. Now all of a sudden these beautiful quality books, which we would spend lots of money here, and they're going to be in the hands of many children. It's going to be a blessing, and this minds of all our children is going to be formed, and we are going to have many intelligent children. Language is the key to the world, and now they are going to get language in the early ages, and language develops between birth to 6 years, and most of these books can be instrumental really to help children develop very well.
The story about this kid, his name is Lama, going to the market and bringing stuff. And when I was a kid, I read that book. And also there's another book I'm interested. It's like a children book. It's a small Tariq Namsale. It's got a lot of small stories in there. And I love that book too.
I read a lot. I think it helps with everything in life. When I was a child, my mother used to dump me in a public library when she went to work. So it wasn't a bad place to be. So I always thought it was a good. And I think my wife is Ethiopian, so I go to Ethiopia a lot, and I couldn't believe there was nothing to read. Really, almost no children's books at all, and I think it's a tragedy.
Amazingly, we have realized some of those dreams at our school, Labawi Academy. It's been amazing. We have students who come from homes without running water, without electricity, who are now attending top colleges in this country. Duke University, Swarthmore, Middlebury, NYU, incredible schools, and around the world, in India, also Ethiopia, in Abu Dhabi. It's amazing that students who are coming from this kind of poverty can achieve this way. So our dream is that what we're doing at Labawi Academy obviously is working, and so we want to expand that, and we want it to spread to all over Ethiopia and even Africa if possible.
Well, there's millions of kids in Ethiopia who are learning how to read but then don't have any books to read. And that's where I really hope Open Hearts Big Dreams will help fill in by producing these books that are colorful and interesting and in local languages. We know there's so many kids that will get excited about reading.
When I went to Ethiopia and I went to the libraries that were built through this organization, and I actually took some books and distributed those books to those kids in Ethiopia, I could see the excitement of these kids when they got their hands on these books, and you could see their eagerness to learn. And then, as I've told you earlier, I could see how that experience not only could change their individual lives, but it has a potential to transform Ethiopia and Ethiopians. So that's how I see the impact of this organization.
Well, I'm the one who got to take the first 900 books over and watch them be distributed to kids. And there were 5 people walking around the classroom snapping pictures with flash because, of course, the classrooms aren't very bright and the light is low. And those kids just couldn't even be distracted. They were so fascinated. These were the first children's books they had ever held. They were the first story books they had ever read. And the pictures were colorful and they were about Ethiopia. And those kids, I watched them turn pages. They would get to the end and they would flip quickly to the front and start again, reading again. So I just know that books, colorful books with stories in them, those are the fascinating things that make it worth reading. And those are things that kids are having the first chance to have in Ethiopia with these books.
My hope is a lot of people in Ethiopia are going to see the possibility, and this organization can also partner with so many, and books are going to be available for everyone in our children. We just heard today there were 3 million children who are ready for first grade, and these children are entering first grade without learning how to read. And now they will learn it, but they will struggle. But then if those children, the coming years, who are going to have books available for them in early ages, are going to have an easy time for education too. So my hope is we are going to have brilliant children all over the country.
Okay, in Ethiopia, like we know, we don't have a lot of libraries and a lot of schools that got a lot of books in their schools. So a lot of kids really always looking for books to read, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one problem most of the time, because there's not a lot of books. Kids are very eager to read. So when they read, they learn a lot, right? So if they don't read, there's always, they get second-hand information, right? Mm-hmm. If they read, they really educate themselves, learn a lot, and they will be good readers. And then when they get readers, they get writers. When they get writers, and they learn about the world, and the world would be a good place for us.
There are 50 million in Ethiopia under 18, and Ethiopia Reads has opened a lot of libraries, 80, but I think every year there are so many more children that I don't think the numbers who have access to books is decreasing. So the problem is much bigger, and I think Ethiopian people have to think, and in America and in Ethiopia have to think about this, because without books you can't learn very much.
Oh my goodness. Well, already the grant that we got this summer was to teach girls coding, and that already has had a huge impact in closing the gender gap, and it was very sophisticated. And they weren't just learning coding, they were learning coding and applying it to a project that they were interested in. So these kids are really getting prepared for today's world, and I would hope that we can continue to do that with support from OHBD.
Luckily, books stay around a long time. I mean, I still read books that were created, let's say, back in the 1950s when I was born, right? But if I discover it for the first time, it's a new book to me. So I do think the books will have a life that will go on and on and on. And adults sometimes buy books for their children that they love to read as children. So hopefully there will be that ripple effect in Ethiopia.
The message that I can transmit to them is reading books is not only for one to be able to read and write. but it's actually transformative. Through books, you can transform yourself into different areas, experience different lifestyles. You can dream, and you can widen your view of the world, and eventually not only it would transform your life, but it will help you to transform your country and your people. Sometimes people just, especially when we were kids, of course, as I told you, we didn't have books, but usually when you go to school and read, the immediate thinking is, oh, I'll go read this and study and get a grade and get a job. But as you grow and as you become an adult, you would start to realize that books are actually much more than that. So my message to them is, go read books for the sake of learning and expanding your horizon, and it will help you be a better person and a better citizen in the future.
Well, I assume that there will be some kids who would dream of writing books. There would be some kids who would dream of illustrating books. There would be kids who would use their reading skills or the creative skills to go on and do other wonderful things. But we've seen that there are always some children who just absolutely grab on to what school has to offer and go in amazing places, like Almaz, who was talking tonight about her experience as a young Eritrean girl. So those children are going to take advantage of what they have, and they're going to take it amazing places. Yeah. Well, whenever you have a gift, a God-given gift, a gift that you were created with, when you use it and when you use it for other people, it enriches you. You're giving something away, but you are actually becoming enriched. So it's just, there's just no downside to volunteering and using your gifts for other people. Sometimes we think we have to make sacrifices for other people, but the wonderful thing about using your creativity is that when you use your creativity for someone else, you actually become enriched as well.
Biggest dream for Ethiopia, I want them to have the opportunity that we have here. And kids are kids, everywhere, right? We adults, especially, we need to respect that. Kids has to be kids to grow. Need to go to school. So my dream is all kids go to school.
Well, I think they should all read to their children. They should try and get their children as many books as possible, and they should do a little bit to support organizations like Open Hearts, Big Dreams, or Ethiopia Reads, or even tell people who vote in Ethiopia, or if they have connections to government, because I think this will be solved when Ethiopian people start asking for more for their children.
I think that I would really like all kids to get the chance to read and read like me, so that would be nice. Take it slow. It doesn't matter how fast you read, just matters that you can read. Yeah. So just keep reading, because that will take you a long way.